This is Kat Sturtz from rockingyourpath.com with another episode of Fast Action Fridays. Today, my special guest is Art Remnet from California. And I can tell you, viewers and listeners, that Art and I can get in a lot of trouble just on the friendship level online. And we can talk each other's heads off. But what I invited Art to share today is about keeping our data safe on our computers. Art, welcome to Fast Action Fridays. Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks a lot for having me, Kat. I appreciate it. I grew up in the techno world and have been computer junkie for since the mid '80s. And hardware was a lot less reliable then than it is now. And because of that, I learned a lot about backing up machines and putting hardware together and all that. Right now I'm focusing mostly on adding video to local businesses' marketing efforts so that they can get more exposure, get more customers, and add revenue to their bottom line. But that doesn't change the need to back up my computer, my data, my client data. Designing websites is always fun until they aren't there, and then you have to try to find them again. So it's saving data is really, really important. And yeah, it just is. It's just one of those facts of life.
I know you and I have both had clients that really didn't understand the importance of backing up until they had a crisis moment. And then it became really clear that the little bit that they might want to spend out of pocket to keep things backed up was worth more than the investment in the long run.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things that I always coach people to do is to keep their machine up to date, be it a Mac or a PC. Take all the updates, get everything updated, let the systems do what they need to do. Old school was, we certainly would never want to take a Windows update because it'll break everything. Microsoft's gotten much better with that over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And so they when they send out an update, it's usually pretty good. And you can always roll back. So I still say to people, update, keep your websites updated, keep your computers updated all the time, just to protect yourself from the security vulnerabilities, as well as improvements in drivers and memory and all those kind of things. That's probably the first big tip for your computer usage, is keep it up to date.
Do you find that most people who don't do that do it out of ignorance in the importance or out of fear of the update breaking something?
That's a great question. Probably a little of both, but I think that the old school, old fears of, oh my gosh, you never want to back anything up, still kind of proliferate the world. And particularly people who are 40, 50, 60 years old, they've been around long enough to know about how bad updates had been in the past, still think, oh my gosh, I can't ever reboot my machine. I never want to turn it off. And I can never take an update until I absolutely have to.
And the other thing I know is sometimes the time it takes to do a major update, say on Windows 10. So you have to plan for that. Luckily, you have the option to set when that occurs, or for it to ask you before it goes and does that. So I encourage people to make sure that you know what your settings are. What else do you have for us? What else is important about keeping our data safe and backed up?
Always backing it up. Always have a way to recover from the accidental deletes, or if your machine goes down, how do you get that data back? I use Dropbox a lot. Almost all of my client data is there. It allows me to share folders with them real easily. Right click, get a link, here's the link. They have access to it. So to me, Dropbox is a godsend in that regard. And the nice thing about Dropbox, as opposed to G Drive and Microsoft drives and all these other drives, is that your files are not only on your machine, but they're also in the cloud. And the Dropbox automatically syncs between the two. So if I have something on that I'm working on and I save it, Dropbox will sync that up to their cloud. And then if I need to get to it from another machine or the same machine later, I can get to it directly without having to worry about, is this the right copy? Is this not the right copy? I had it on a thumb drive, but I update the thumb drive between here and my laptop. All those things go away. Dropbox just makes that seamless. And I really appreciate that. And it serves as a secondary source for my data. So if my machine fried right after I saved something and it synced with Dropbox, my machine's now gone, I can go to another machine, access Dropbox, and I have that copy. And that to me is worth more than Dropbox charges me in a year. I think I have the $100 a year, $120, whatever their 100 gig or 100 terabyte plan is. And that's what I use. That's my first line of defense. The other thing that I always want to do is have another backup copy. Because I'm old school. Remember, I went back with the PCs. It failed all the time. So I wanted to have an external hard drive and have that old school local copy of that. I don't do that anywhere near as much as I used to, but I still have a drive that I turn on and will back up my machine and then turn it off and stick it back in the closet. And now I have that backup that every 3 months, 6 months, something like that, I've got a fresh copy. Doesn't help me with the day-to-day stuff, but it definitely helps me with recovering the majority of my things.
And it's
What
doubly
else
important.
do you do with it?
Yeah, and it's doubly important if you're doing business. I know most of my followers and my clients and yours, a lot of yours as well, we're home-based business people. And we're out of business, at least temporarily, if we can't get to our files and our client
Absolutely.
files.
And Dropbox really helps me with that. I learned and fine-tuned Dropbox being on the road. I used to travel a lot. And so if I had my home machine that wasn't a laptop, it's a tower, I can't pick that up and just take that on the road, stick it on my arm, and take it to the airport. That's not happening. So, but I needed to be able to access that data. And sometimes I'm working on project XYZ, and I have a client that isn't related to that at all, but I have to service them, and I'm on the road. How do I get to their stuff? Well, I log into the computer I'm on, hop into Dropbox, grab their files, do what I need to do, and I've got access to it. So that saved me a lot over the last, probably 10 years of travel.
Do you find yourself having to educate your clients on using Dropbox on their end in concert with what you're doing with them?
Many times they've already got Dropbox, at least the free version of Dropbox. And so it doesn't take long for them to figure it out today. 5, 7, 10 years ago, it was a different story. You had to, what's Dropbox and why do I do that? And, oh, that's magic. Yeah, that's really cool. So you don't get that reaction anymore, but you usually don't have to explain too much about it. Here's a Dropbox link, just get to it. There's the files you need, and they can put files into that folder for me. So it works really well as a sharing device.
Yeah, I really,
in addition to the backup.
I'm with you in terms of sharing. I know that with my regular office desk computer, I have lots of storage space. But on my old laptop that I still use, I have to use selective sync because there's not enough space there to hold all of my Dropbox files or even to sync all of my Google Drive files because I use both for slightly different purposes. All right.
The upside of Google Drive is that it's all in the cloud, which is nice. Mm-hmm. But
no, you can sync it to your hard drive. You can do the same thing you can with Dropbox where I have it synced to my hard drive. What you really have to be careful about with Google Drive, in my understanding, is if you delete something from one of the places and it's synced, it's deleted from all of those places. So
correct. That's exactly where I was going with that. But yeah, exactly. So
Is
Google
that true
Drive
of
and Dropbox
Dropbox?
work a little bit differently.
Yeah, is that true of Dropbox too? That if I have it synced to my shared folder and I delete it from my laptop or my home office copy, is it deleting it automatically from the shared folder as well?
When it syncs, if you're not selectively syncing, yes.
Okay.
But
Right.
there's to me there's more options in Dropbox in how all that works.
Right.
Um,
And not
so
so many
anyway,
hoops.
you play with it.
Right. And not so
Right,
many hoops when you want to share something.
right. It's very easy to share in Dropbox. You just take the link and right click on the folder. Here's the folder, and it's done. You can share a single file that way. I usually share a folder that way they can add files to it, and I can add files to it later, and it's one place. I don't have to share it again.
Yeah. All right.
So that's a Dropbox tip, but that's not backing up your data.
Right. All right. So 2 of the 3 tips so far. Tip number 1 was
Keep your machine up to date.
keep your
Take all the
machine.
updates. Make sure they're there.
Okay. Number 2 was
Have a working copy, a backup copy of your data, either locally or remotely or both, depending on your level of risk avoidance.
and what's number 3?
Number 3 is always have a cloud backup of your whole thing that's running in the background. And the importance of the background is that you don't have to think about it. It just happens. Because again, learning from myself, if I don't think about it, I don't turn it on, it won't happen.
No.
And it's so I really like, and there are a number of programs out there that you can do that with. There's Barracuda and Carbonite and those guys, and some are better than others, and you can play with them. The one that after all these years I use, and I think it's the same one you use, and that's BackBlaze. And what I really love about BackBlaze is the license you get is for your PC and or Mac and any drive that's attached to it. So they don't say, oh, only your hard drive and no external drives or whatever. If you stick 5 or 6 external drives on there, it'll back them all up.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, you now have all of your data backed up to the cloud, and it's all available to you for 30 days on a rotating basis. So if I back up something, if I change a file today and it gets backed up, it's there for ever until I delete it. As soon as I delete it, I have 30 days before it disappears from BackBlaze.
Right.
So that really makes life easy and simple for me.
And you were the one who recommended BackBlaze to me because I had tried several of the others and I found them either cumbersome or expensive, and BackBlaze is more than reasonable in terms of the cost of it to have to back up my whole system. And it was a godsend when we had a fire at the back of the house that fried my computer system. But at the time I was working off of a laptop, everything was there. And when I got my new system, I was able to take that and put it right back on, and away I went. It was so seamless, and it was so easy to set up. I didn't need a technical degree to understand, do this, and you're all set.
Exactly. The really cool thing for me is I take a lot of pictures. I'm a photo junkie as far as taking pictures go. So if I'm not behind my desk, you probably have my camera with me, and I take a lot of pictures. And so over the years, I've built up a fair size collection of pictures, like 8-9 terabytes worth of pictures. And so those external drives are plugged into my PC, and they get backed up by BackBlaze. Well, the cool thing about what happened, and it happened just last week, this drive failed. And that has most of my pictures on it. It's at least the most recent pictures. It's about a 5 terabyte drive. I won't mention the brand, but any hardware is going to fail at some point when it's on. Typically, all the time, it's just going to fail. And the hardware fails.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, "Oh, this is wonderful. My drive is toast, and all of my pictures are there. I wonder how bad this is going to be, because you never really know." So I said, "All right, cool. Let me log into BackBlaze," and took a look and said, "Okay, there's my L drive." And I said, "Great. So just send it to me." And BackBlaze has a program that they will mail you
A hard drive,
a little hard
hard
drive.
disk. Yep.
And it is that particular one I think is 4 terabytes. And it cost me $189 for them to mail it to me. As long as I get it back to them within 30 days, they refund that, and it costs me nothing. So they
That's
copy
awesome.
all my data off of their drives onto this. They mail it to me. It took it probably 2 days, maybe 3 days to get here. I had it. I can now copy all of my pictures that were there are there. They were all up to date. I lost nothing. I'll copy it from this to the new home for my drive, and then I will pop it back in the box and send it back to BackBlaze. It'll cost me nothing, and I have just restored 4 terabytes worth of data. Now, if you
Right.
only need a couple files because you accidentally delete them or whatever, you can get those real easy. Just download them. They'll zip it up for you or whatever to expedite the upload download process. But when you're talking terabytes of data, it's way easier to just go ahead and have them send you a disk. I think you can do that 10 or 12 times a year. So you
Wow.
can't do that unlimited times. But if you have a number of failures, you can get drives sent to you without charge, deposit but no charge, right? You get it refunded that many times in a year. And again, the nice thing about BackBlaze for me is that it's unlimited space. So I don't just have 2 terabytes or whatever. I think I have 10 or 11 terabytes worth of data with BackBlaze now.
Right. Yeah, and the peace of mind is worth every penny of this.
Oh yeah.
If you're watching this episode, you're going to see a link along the bottom to a free resource that we will have. I'm going to have on that resource, you'll have a link to go try out BackBlaze. The main point we're making, though, is use something. Use BackBlaze or Carbonite or iCloud. Heaven forbid, that was the worst one I ever tried. I couldn't figure it out, and I can't get it off my machine, so it sits there unused. But I'm not paying for it. But it wasn't my thing. So if you're listening to this episode, you're going to go to rockingyourpath.com and you're going to search for Fast Action Friday and the episode with Art Remnet, and you will get your free resource link there. Art, sum up the most important point that we want people to take away from this episode.
Oh, there's 3. Keep your machine up to date. Have a way to back it up. Be smart in how you use your data, how you store your data, and then back it up to the cloud in addition to that second way, so that you're covered. Because something will fail. It's hardware. Something will fail, and when it does, you don't have to panic. You know how it's going to work. You just have to follow the steps and you recover.
Exactly. This is for your peace of mind. This is not a whine fest about equipment or systems breaking. They all do. Our bodies break down over time too. Your car needs to have maintenance. You blow a tire, you need a new muffler, whatever. You got to put gas back in it. This is just one of those things. And if you're doing business online or even offline and you're just using your computer for your internal files, it's your responsibility to keep that backup going. It's not your hardware and your software's responsibility for keeping that all safe. They may promise all of that, but in the end, we have to take responsibility for our own materials and our own resources and our own assets. And it's a cost of doing business, correct?
Absolutely. Or having a hobby like photography that you don't lose all your photos with.
Before I leave, are there any, if somebody says, oh my, I'm really just starting out, I need to keep things really, really cheap, I don't want to pay for a backup program right now, we're going to tell them, really find it in your budget, give up a pizza once a month and pay for something like BackBlaze. But are there free programs out there to get started with if they don't have, multiple terabytes of information to back up?
There are definitely ways you can do it. Most of them are manual. And that's my challenge with it, because life is busy and I forget to do the manual things. So yes, there are. The easiest way is to go buy an external hard drive at your favorite box store or whatever, online, Amazon, whatever. You could pick it up. They're generally fairly cheap. Match the size of what you're looking for with what you actually have on your machine. So if you have a terabyte hard drive, then you want to have a terabyte or a 2 or 3 terabyte hard drive. I think the last time I was pricing them, a 4 terabyte drive was less than $100.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not talking about a monumental expense. And then most of those external hard drives come with some kind of backup software. Run that backup software and let it back up your computer. Once it's backed up, then you can disconnect that drive and stick it on a bookshelf someplace, and you have that backup. Put a note on your calendar for 3 months later or a month later, or however long you want to wait. Remember, the longer you wait, the bigger your exposure if there's a loss. So every week, every 2 weeks, every month, 3 months, whatever, put a note on your calendar to plug that drive back in and make the next backup.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, at least you've got it done fairly cheaply, and it's on an ongoing basis.
Right. And it's important to store that backup somewhere other than where your actual computer system is, because if, God forbid, the house burns down, it's going to take your backup with it. You and I are both old enough and techie enough to remember back when we did backups of our little bitty 20 and 30 megabyte hard drives with little floppies, and you'd sit, and then I had a zip drive and you pop that in every so often. But you really have to be honest with yourself and say, are you going to remember to do that?
That was always the problem. That was that challenge is the only way I could overcome that is this kind of a cloud-based automatic in the background thing. One time I had a disk drive array that would do that for me. It was all local. The challenge with that, though, was if my house burned down or my office burned down, it went with it because it's always attached to the machine backing it up.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And the other challenge is making sure you label properly so you don't accidentally overwrite the newer version of a backup with the older version of a backup. I did that once with a book chapter that was due at the publishers.
Of course it was due, otherwise it wouldn't happen.
So I'm a big fan of having it automated and offsite. And again, we both highly recommend BackBlaze. It's not the only one out there, but we really want to encourage you to do something to keep you and your data safe and your peace of mind intact.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for joining me today, Art. This is valuable information, and I hope all of my listeners take it to heart. I'd love to know what their backup systems currently are. You'll be able to do that on the blog post or right here if you're, depending on where you're watching it, in the comments. In the meantime, I want to encourage you to come back and see next week's episode of Fast Action Friday, when I will have another great guest. And always remember to keep rocking your unique path to success. Bye-bye.